Hey time travelers, in this video I'm going to be refurbishing this cheap mechanical keyboard. I don't particularly like the switches that are in it right now, so I'm going to take them out and put better ones in. It's these Gateron KS9 Browns, but at least these are better than the ones that were in there before.
This keyboard came with some weird off-brand switches in it.
America flavored, all the red, white, and blue.
I'm going to show you how to desolder old switches and solder in better ones so you can make a crappy keyboard more premium.
This is a Sony. Oh, and here's the irony. Model N-J9 Pro. These switches failed less than a year after I got this keyboard, and I shoved it in the closet because I didn't know what I'm about to teach you in this video. And then when I did later learn about swapping switches, I put switches in here that I also didn't like. This is my look of disapproval keycap. If you're into seeing silly little skits, I did a skit where I got a bunch of stuff for myself, and this keyboard was one of them, and you can see that video right there. All right, you know, solder in pliers and cutters and crazy switch pullers and things. This is the section about the tools that you're going to need to do a job like this. First thing you want to be, I'd say, aware of or versed or whatever. The knowledge you need is about keycap pullers and switch pullers.
Before you go pulling keycaps off, take pictures of areas of the keyboards where there might be a unique layout or unique keys. For example, the right side modifier keys on this keyboard are Alt, Function, Context, and Control. But another keyboard I have that I'll be showing you later on is laid out as Alt, OS, Function, Control.
Like this Alt comes off easy because it's easy to get to with my thumb right there. Some are easier to pull than others. And then after I desolder this, or if it's a hot swap socket, you have different types of switch pullers. But let's take a look at the different kinds. Sometimes when you buy like a keycap set or something, it'll come with what looks like this, or this, or this. These are pretty decent, and I prefer to use them for certain keys like this. You just push it straight down, wait for it to click, and it's not clicking. Oh, it didn't click because this is like a rubberized keycap. And then set it aside. Make sure you have enough room for all your keycaps. Like, shove everything out of the way. Get out of here, drink can. You're not in this scene. Don't have room for you right now. Then you also have keycap pullers that look like this. What you do is you put it down like that. Make sure it goes around. Make sure both sides are on and just pull straight up.
I will show you other kinds of switch pullers later in the video, but this is my favorite kind right here. It will make your life tons of easier, and you'll see why later.
An optional tool to have in your arsenal of tools is a magnetic parts tray.
And this is to hold the screws when you take apart the keyboard.
If you don't have it yet, get an iFixit kit that's square, looking like this, and has the tweezers, has a few bits like this. These plastic things, because some keyboards, like this one over here, if you want to take it apart, you're going to need to pop little clips apart. And that's what these things are for right here. You get it in there to hold it apart, and then this to pry it to do the next thing, to make those click, 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 and you hold it apart with these. Anyways.
Also, this version of the kit from iFixit comes with these tweezers you'll need for disconnecting the internal cable and other stuff sometimes.
Now this is a soldering iron that I'm going to turn on now. I don't know what temperature you might specifically need. Don't turn it up above 695 because I burned out 2 of these by trying to go hotter to make things easier. I'm going to drop a link in the description below for this soldering iron specifically, and hopefully they're still selling that particular one.
Also, this soldering iron came with really good flux that you can use, but don't use the solder that came with it.
Another thing that I have is this really, really old desoldering iron where this is hot. This is the only way I check to see if it's hot. I get close, like an inch away. Don't get any closer, you'll burn yourself. Where you can it'll hold it down on the solder, melt the solder, and suck it up.
This was a great desoldering iron until they stopped selling replacement tips. This newer one I have sucks it up better, but you have to periodically take it apart to clean it. So make sure you read the instructions that come with it. Then you have the regular kind of solder suckers, which look like this.
These are cheap. I hate them and I love them because they're awesome when they work, and I hate and they're terrible when they don't. Luckily, they come in like a pack of 3. And already I can see I've got, I don't know if you can really see, there's solder like stuck on the inside, and I can't, here we go. I got good light on it there. And you see that thing that comes out when I push the plunger down? And what happens is when you push this button right here, it goes like that. It goes like that and creates a suction and pulls it out. But occasionally I'll have to do this with a soldering iron to get the solder that's stuck inside the tip out, and then put it in the braid like that to scrub it off of the soldering iron.
You also have to take apart the solder sucker occasionally to dump out the old solder. And when you buy switches, sometimes the package will come with a switch puller.
They're all pretty much the same thing, even though some of the bends will look different.
And this thing I was showing you earlier is also a switch puller, not just a keycap puller. You will need something clean to put all of the switches into. I use this old Smart Balance tub.
You want something like this. I call them side cutters or whatever. Here's a name on the screen.
These are for cutting things, mainly making 5-pin switches fit into a 3-pin socket.
And also get some of these. Also, name on the screen. Super duper tiny pliers like that. This is for when a pin is slightly off and you forgot to check your pin first before putting it down. It has to be bent out straight again. You need super duper tiny pliers. This is a good brand solder, Kester. But you really want to get 6337. That's
rosin core or whatever. The 6337 means the amount of tin and lead in it, and that ratio is the best kind. You will need a wire wool thingy. It's the best way to keep the soldering iron tip clean. You periodically shove it in there and scrub it around.
Shove it in, shove it in.
As for cleaning the keyboard, I recommend some disinfectant wipes, an old toothbrush, isopropyl alcohol, and some shop towels because they are lint-free. Okay, let's move on to disassembly and cleaning.
Now what we have to think about is cleaning the mounting plate. And like you can blow on it to get a lot of crumbs or hair, and obviously you see I got some hair in my case. Maybe I just shaved. And then I walked into the room to use my keyboard and it just went falling all in that one spot. Whatever. Dry toothbrush also goes a long way. You want to do your dry cleaning first. If you have one of those keyboards where this is the mounting plate and you see it goes right up to the edge, this makes it easier to clean for this reason. Like most of the time you don't even have to take the keycaps off. What I do is I take like a credit card, wrap it in a wipe like that, and push it all the way left, and it pushes all the crumbs and stuff out of the left side of the keyboard. But still, once a year I take all the keycaps off and do this. Well, a lot of keyboards have this outer shell that comes up and comes around, like this one right here. You see that? Or if I take one of these keycaps off so you can see, and then let's turn the backlights down. You wouldn't be able to do that until taking the frame apart. So just keep that in mind. You're going to be taking the frame apart anyway. So while the frame's apart and you have access to the frame, in some keyboards, before you actually fully take it apart, you can do this cleaning step that I'm doing right now. But you need to at least have this top half taken off. Not just have some, you know, regular old isopropyl rubbing alcohol. I usually don't use that much. It's usually just about a cap's worth. If you want, you can use some sort of small container of some kind to hold it. And then I just dip the toothbrush in and go over it. And go in between all of the switches, getting you more, like, I don't know, smudges or whatever your grubby hands might have put on there, depending on your lifestyle choices.
So, you're a minor person with grubby hands.
I don't understand.
I'm not judging you. I'm not your mom. I'm just showing you how to clean your keyboard. God, don't start raging at me in the comments already, Jam. If you want to wipe it down with a paper towel, I want to use just a regular kitchen paper towel. These are ones from Lowe's right here. There you go. Because they're zero lint. Your local hardware store should have towels like this in the paint department. Or you can get the roll of blue ones from like an auto parts store. These, in my opinion, are a little bit better. I'm just getting any big droplets of alcohol off of here. That's all. I should have been more careful because now some of my keycaps are out of order. And it's going to screw me up later. It's just rubbing alcohol. I used almost all of this little thing. Toss. I have a couple keyboards like this where you got these tiny little screws all along the surface, and that's what holds it together. And I like to count them. I wrote it down somewhere off screen, don't worry about it.
That's important because later on you're going to want to make sure you have them all.
And before you go try prying on things, you're going to want to flip it over and inspect and make sure there's not another spot with a screw.
This keyboard had the screws on top underneath the keycaps, but lots of keyboards have them on the back.
Sometimes they hide them under these feet on some devices, but I haven't seen that on keyboards yet. I have one keyboard, there was a sticker hiding a screw. You can like rub your finger over the sticker, and there's a bump in here, but it's not from a screw. It is just from like where the molding machine was holding this big chunk of plastic when they were shaping it. You do want to collapse the feet because you don't want to break them at any point. This thingy from the iFixit, and just lift up. Oh, that's not so bad. And the wire comes with it. Some keyboards will have the wire going to a small little board in here, and you'll have to disconnect it. This is also a good time if you see a bunch of crumbs and things in here. One of my keyboards was just full of junk in here. Is just to clean it out. Do the dry clean with a brush, which I'm just going to do that right now. And if you have to later, do a wet clean. Even use canned air to blow this all out as your first step before doing the brush clean, and then the wet clean as the last one, and then wipe it dry. But since I've already done this, when I put in these KS9 Gateron Brown switches, it doesn't really need that much done to it right now. This part you want to be super gentle with, and I'll spin it around so my other camera doesn't block it. We're going to use the tweezers from the iFixit kit, which have come in so handy a bajillion times for me doing this. There you go. Now, while it's like this, if this looks dirty, same deal goes. You don't want to use soap and water because you could damage stuff, but doing a dry clean followed by toothbrush dipped in isopropyl alcohol to scrub it down, and then take your towel and dab it down. You don't want to rub the towel because it'll rip it on the solder joints.
Now let's go over how to desolder the old switches so we can remove them.
Now's a good time to look at how it's mounted on the side. I did one keyboard where I pulled every switch out before putting in new switches, and that turned out to be not a good idea because the distance between the plate and the PCB is maintained by the switches themselves. So this time what I'm going to try to do is leave certain ones in, but take a bunch out, put the new ones I want in to hold everything together the way it needs to be, and then take the other ones out and do those. You already have a soldering iron, and you just grab some of these solder suckers off of Amazon. You heat the solder until it turns a liquid. This is going to go faster for me than you watching because this is all good solder.
Technically, the PCB had high heat solder on it originally, and in order to get it to flow, I had to put some of the solder I told you about on the switch pins. I'll show you how to do that a little bit later in the video.
And what I'm doing is sucking it up, and you can have a trash can next to you. I'm just pointing it at the floor to my side because I sweep and vacuum in the basement a lot. Now let's see how the desoldering iron works. You hold the plunger down so that it creates a vacuum inside. You heat the solder and then you suck it up. And I like to use an old like wipe, set it to the side, spit that out. This is the newer, I guess, more modern kind of desoldering iron. You plug it in, it just gets hot. And there's no temperature controls or anything, and that's fine. It works fine, and it's like a solder sucker where you push this down, and then you put it down on whatever you want to heat, and when the solder melts, you press this button to suck it up, and occasionally you have to turn it off and let it cool down and pinch these things so you can take this out and clean it out. And there's some sort of oil that I haven't oiled it with that is mentioned in the instructions of mine. Most annoying thing is if you miss one. So do a section and then go back and double check it. There's all I already gonna see. I can't talk. I can't words right now.
I can't words.
I can already see a couple spots where it looks like either I missed it or it didn't suck it off properly, and then it just fell right back down onto the switch pin. I'm gonna show you this little caveat that I had on another keyboard that I refurbished, because this keyboard had switches failing after a couple of years, and then I went and replaced them, but it was full of the LEDs that come through the switch, as in here's a switch and there's two pins down here that come through to the PCB and they're soldered on, and then the LED sticks up over the top.
This is only for keyboards where you A, want to replace every single LED, or B, have to replace, like at the lock keys or whatever. In my case, this keyboard had LEDs coming through every switch, and I only tried to replace the ones for the lock switches.
I could not get them to come out after I desoldered them. They were like fighting me and stuff. And if I pulled too hard, it like would rip and damage the PCB. So I quit doing that. And I just used this right here and would go underneath the LED like this and kind of angle it down and just squeeze, and it would pop and fly off. So if you have to do that, definitely wear safety goggles, because safety wants.
Then after desoldering and removing the switch, I had to go on the top side with the cutters and cut the leads off of the LEDs that were still in there and carefully remove them with tweezers.
I could have replaced every single LED on the PCB when I put in the new switches. And what if you have to do this on a keyboard, you want 3mm 3V. I mean, so take 3 volts to light up, and 3mm is the size that go in there. And you have to make sure the switches you buy, see that little round hole there? This is just FYI. Every now and then you will find a switch that can do both the SMD, because you can see an LED that's on the PCB from below will be able to shine through this, but you also have the cutout for a 3mm to fit into the side of the top of the housing there. And the pins go through nicely. It might not be a wide slit like this. It might just be two little holes with a little round slot. And there's also like a curve cut into the side of the housing here to accept a 3mm LED. I only did like scroll lock and number lock, and that's it. I tested the caps lock and I couldn't get that one to work, so I just left the LED out. So notes about putting them in is that you may want to test each LED on each spot that you want to do. In this case, I only needed, at most 3. So hook up the battery or the USB cord or whatever to your PCB. Be super careful that your PCB doesn't touch your work surface and get grounded out or whatever. And your LED is going to have 2 legs, the new LED. The longer one is your positive.
And you can usually find some sort of indicator on the PCB about which side is positive or negative. I'll show you on another keyboard in a minute.
How I did it was I held it like this, and I held the LED against it and toggled the lock, and then it would light up over here, and then fed it through, soldered it in, bent the legs, turned it back on, hooked it back up to the computer, and tested it. So I only, you only have to do that 1, 2, 3 times.
A few days later, I was working on my Rosewell keyboard, and it had an LED, so I recorded it to show you how to get it out and replace it when you put in a new switch.
All right, I've got the Rosewell board here, and it does have one LED that I have to deal with that uses the through hole thing. But in this case, I have to replace this one because, check this out. Before you pull it out, you have to verify how it works. So this one is to turn the Windows lock on. So let's say you're gaming, you don't want to accidentally press the Windows button and crash your game. Or it might be like a number lock or something, but this keyboard, the LEDs for those statuses are over here. A lot of the keyboards I've worked on will say plus or minus, so you can tell the polarity of the LED. This one doesn't. The positive side is the longer leg of the LED. If it doesn't immediately turn on, so like verify this is on, right there, turn it over. If it does not immediately turn on, pull away, because then you might short it out by putting it the wrong way. If that does turn on, If you want to replace it with a different color, keep in mind that the keyboard was designed for whatever color LED that is, and each color requires a different amount of amps or volts or something to get the same brightness, because whatever material inside for each color is different. In this case, I've identified that positive is on the right, so I'll just go like this and put a positive. This might be practically impossible depending on how the board was originally manufactured. When I did this on my GameSir keyboard, I just ended up cutting all the LEDs off from the top using side cutters. I'm gonna try this other solder sucker to see if I can get the rest of this solder out. No? So maybe if I put this good switch puller on there, because it's like anchors itself until you do the release button. Now I have 4 pins to think about. Okay, now pull the other way as I heat these. There we go. That was a lot more viable as a job with this better switch puller. And there's your LED. And I could try to reuse it, but I have to clean the solder off these pins if I want to get it out. And one of the pins is a tiny bit crooked. So, straighten it out with this tool. It's got one leg longer than the other. Now that's not necessarily the positive leg, because after you install something in a circuit, you cut them off. I clean out inside of there a little bit with a toothbrush. Now I'm looking where that plus sign is that I made earlier. And it is longer on the positive side. Let's go like this. Lay it out.
I'll show you how to test and solder in the LED at the end of the part later in the video where I install the switches. For now, let's continue on with how to remove switches after they've been desoldered with the switch puller.
If I can get one of these. See how easy that is?
No.
So here's a switch. Here's your LED hole. And you could see the actual switch inside of here on the opposite side of the LED hole.
Focus! Focus on the switch! There we go.
And I'm glad I have this macro lens. It took me forever to find it. I went all over the house to look for it, just for doing stuff like this in the video. You see this bit here? I'm going to draw a red line across in editing. That is the plate, because it's a plate mount switch. Most keyboards these days use plate mount switches. This part here and this part here are what grab onto the plate. And in order to release the switch from the plate, you have to push these clips in on both the front and back, or some people might say the north and the south. Like that, and pull it out. Here's a better view of the plate mount switches. Like, see how it's mounted to the plate. PCB mount switches are not as popular anymore. It's where just the plate is just a hole and the switch goes through, it solders to the PCB, and then as you're typing, you're flexing the PCB, and over time the solder points break. Sorry earlier I didn't have focus, but there we go. That's how it works. And I'm using the Smart Balance tub to catch all my switches. Toss. And okay, and here's another one. I have a really sweet KEMOVE keyboard, and it came with a keycap puller on one side and a switch puller on the other side. And I like this better than those kind, because if I need to separate it, I could push my finger in between, or just go like this, hold it. And that's not coming, and it's not the switch puller's fault. It's the solder needs to be checked on the other side. There goes another one. And then you got your super fancy kind, which some of them have the keycap puller that you can take and open up on the other end. Some of them don't. Doesn't really matter. That's not the point. The point is this bit right here, because it closes like that, and then you go boink, and you could just crank through your switches really fast. That doesn't want to come. That does. Toss, toss, toss. So I did pretty good. I've got 2 where I gotta spin it around and see what's going on. I get these out of my way and put them in the bucket. I'm even seeing a spot that's kind of dirty with solder, and I'll show you how to clean that out in a minute. This one, I touch it gently so that I can feel the pin sticking up because I got old man eyes. I can't see everything. So I heat it up and I watch the solder around it go around. And I push it like laterally this way to see if maybe the pin was bent over and got resoldered and stuck to the edge. And then sometimes, and this might be super awkward to film, we'll see, I'll take this kind of switch puller and grab it and get ready, and then touch the pins with heat and pull it out that way. If you are planning on using these again, you can either do this now or later on when you want to use these switches again.
Or if you're going to sell them, this is how you clean them off, so you're not a jerk eBay seller.
Obviously, you're just pulling crappy switches out of a cheap keyboard. You're not going to be doing this. Like in my case, these are Gateron, so I might use them for something. Just give them a quick clean so they go easily into another keyboard without having big lumps or whatever in the way.
All right, now let's talk about what kind of switches I'm putting in there. This keyboard came with some generic brown Jene switches, and I might be saying that wrong, but who cares? And then I put in Gateron KS9 switches, which I discovered which were pretty fatiguing to me, so now I'm trying a Gateron Jupiter brown switches.
Check it out, the switches that I'm putting in there. I was just thinking, like, how many can I put in? And not get them mixed up. And what I'm putting in are Gateron Jupiter browns. They look almost exactly the same, but look, check it out. So much quieter. All right, Jupiter switch set from Gateron. Silent? They're not silent. They're just better, okay? Whatever. What if I open them up to see if the springs are different? Let's see if I see any other differences inside. The Jupiter one is lubed, and the KS9 does not appear to be lubed. This has a longer spring. Longer springs are better. The Jupiter spring looks about 20 millimeters, and the KS9 is 14.8, maybe 14.6. Yeah, 14.6 or 7 or something like that, whatever. So with a longer spring, it's already got preload or whatever, it's already compressed. Let's say they're both 55 gram springs. The short one is going to start out at a low number and quickly ramp up to the high number and feel stiffer than the long one. So the long one's going to be pre-compressed, so it's already closer to that final number, so it feels like more natural or whatever. And another way to look at it is that the short spring is going to have a really steep graph from initial pressing the switch to actuation to end at the bottom of the key travel, whereas a long spring is going to be a shorter slope like this, or maybe like that. And the top housing is different, which brings me to the next point, which is going to apply to no matter what kind of switches you're doing. You have to be able to look at the switch and identify the old ones versus the new ones. So on these new ones, they have the SMD, surface mount diode diffuser, and the old ones just have the slit for the old style LEDs to go through. And you can see that little rectangle there is the surface mount diode, aka SMD. But enough about all that. You should subscribe because I am working on another video where I changed the springs in some switches. It's so easy that anybody with a steady hand and a knowledge of, things coming apart, going back together can do it.
Okay, now it's time to solder in the new switches.
What we want to look at now is how clean these holes are. Some of them are still kind of gross. And solder braid is an option. Looks like this. It's just copper in a thing that feeds it out, where you heat up the solder and then rub it over it. And see, that's clean enough for me to get a pin through there now. And now I'm facing another problem. These won't go in. And I know why. It's not that big of a deal. These sockets are 3-pin. Okay? The KS9s are 3-pin. and the Jupiter browns are 5-pin. Explanation! Learning time! Here's your 2 contact pins. Okay, usually these are the same. The cheaper ones, a few brands that I'm going to go over in a separate video, are able to go into the cheap hot swap socket pins because they're a little bit narrower, but otherwise the placement's the same. The center pin is like the centering pin to where it goes down in here. And these side ones they started doing later. These 2 plastic pins, we're about to cut those off. Those are, here we go. They're just there to add extra stability. And for these, what I like to do is get the cutters on there, just like that. And then cover it with your thumb, but in a way so that when this closes, it doesn't pinch you. Because otherwise, this piece of plastic just flies. And I don't even know where it went. Dang it. There. Oh, they fell down. And have a container ready to toss them in. Now, if I put it down into the socket, it should go in. Just like that. And it clicks in. Look at that. That brown doesn't match the other brown.
This coffee smells like sh**.
It is Austin.
Oh good, then it's not just me. It's a bit nutty.
That's the original switches that were in this keyboard. Can you even see that? I don't know if you could see it, but it says Jixjian. Alright, I've got this whole row done.
Okay, past me forgot to say that I'm soldering now. I have the solder and soldering iron. I'm soldering now. Okay.
I'll start with this one so you can see what I'm working on. A couple pieces of gook around that I cleaned up just now by just touching it. Just cover the pin. And it shouldn't look like too much like a bubble. It should more look like a Hershey's Kiss shape. That's why I touched the top of the pin after the solder bubbled up. You don't always have to do it, but you don't want to get what's called a cold solder joint later on when it just breaks and that switch stops working. It's a good idea once you got solder piling up on your soldering iron and making little dark spots to put it into your scouring thingy, scrub it. This is way better than a sponge in my opinion. And make sure you put your soldering tools back down on this because I just burned a hole in my work mat. And I melted work mat all over this thing that I have to figure out how to clean off later. Dang it!
Now I'm going to show you how to solder in the through-hole LEDs and test them.
I have a whole bunch of these because for some reason they're cheaper. The Cherry MX2A purple that takes an SMD diode. I mean, there's no hole there. And that's not going to work in this situation. So I have to pull from my stash of slightly more expensive LED ones. They look like this. There's the LED holes for that type, and here's the SMD kind that doesn't have the hole. And by the way, let's see if you can see this. This is another symbol that helps you identify polarity. That arrow means the current flows in that direction. So positive left, negative right. And if we flip it over, you can see that I marked it positive left for the LED. This switch pin is a little bit crooked, so just straighten it out. That one's good. And I've got to cut off the thingies. Toss. Yes, I toss things on the floor. Toss. Put this in first. Longer pin is on the left because I laid it down that way. I also have another one that I got on Amazon a long time ago for some other project. See if I can push it all the way through. It's not wanting to go through those pinholes because there's still solder on the pins. So let's try to do this. Get clean.
Clean up our life, you know what I mean? Get clean. Clean living.
Still doesn't want to go through because those pinholes are dirty. So I'm going to do this trick. See how I'm doing that? I'm just very carefully putting a soldering iron in there and then sucking the solder out from the other end. So then you get super clean holes like that. Put it over, put that in. Try to use my old LED. Now it goes all the way through. See, it went.
Focus.
Oh, I love this camera. It focuses so fast. Push that all the way through. Now I'm holding the LED from below with my left hand middle finger. And I'm going to hold the solder in my mouth. Right, like this.
I've seen people use sticky tack for this, or tape, and someday I might grow up and try that.
I don't want to grow up. Find a Toys R Us kid. They got a million toys at Toys R Us that I can play with.
Right. Right. Now the flip, and then we'll test it. Turned on for a second, and then it turned off. Did I burn it out?
No. Hey, if you know what I did wrong, leave a comment below with the timestamp for this spot in the video, and we'll see if you're right. Don't cheat by looking ahead in the video.
Not.
No, it still sounds like you're winking. I want to be very clear. No cheating.
Oh.
It's also possible I put it in there backwards, and as soon as it got voltage, it got burned out. I can't get this one to light up. Okay. Double checking there's not a short in between. Now let's try it. Like not a short, a bridge. So it's still working. I'm pressing other buttons on the keyboard to make sure it works on the computer and it's working. That is crazy. It lights up for a second and it turns off. Number lock works, scroll lock works. Oh, I know, duh. In order to test this, I have to be able to toggle it. And I can't toggle it until I put solder on the actual switch that toggles it. Sorry about that, but I figured it out. Okay, LED works. We're done. I'm sorry for having a different mic quality, but I wanted to make you aware of a couple of gatchas or hang-ups, as it were. First of all, when you get over to the number pad area, what I like to do is do the top right and the bottom right before I pull the other ones out, because that way the distance from the PCB and the plate is correct. And you know, see, I've already soldered those in before I start yanking all these out. And yanking this one out is not fun because the stabilizer is blocking the spots where you have to grab the switch to pull it out. Depends on your keyboard how you're going to do this. You don't have the same problem with these stabilizers that are over here, like your shift and your enter, because you grab it from above and from below. And it might be different depending on your keyboard, but you see, I could barely get this in there. Kind of be gentle. I can't get that one in there. Let's try this one, where I need to get these to go in there.
When you're pushing it down, you could feel if each prong of the puller has gone in.
That seems to be working. All right. On another keyboard, this didn't work for this spot, and I used this kind. The other thing you want to think about is after you've desoldered your switch and you pull it out, inspect the socket for little chunks of solder. Sometimes I spit on the tip of my finger, which is a tiny bit of moisture, and put my finger down and it picks it up. Sometimes you have to go in with a pair of tweezers and get them out. You do not want loose bits of solder just floating around inside of your keyboard, because they might go somewhere and short something out and mess things up later on. All right, here are some tips slash gotchas of what I noticed when I was working on this other keyboard. This is a Rose Wheel. It's got these kind of stabilizers like this, and there's a little plastic thing that hooks onto each end of these that goes into the little stem slots of the wider keycaps. And my tip is to look at what orientation they go in and keep them in the keycap. I think this might be a better way to show you these stabilizers on this DIY sort of thing I did with point-to-point wiring. If you want me to do a video on this thing, beg me in the comments. Take one of the switches off slowly and carefully for these long ones. And you see how it's got these things. Some keyboards don't have that. This metal bar is underneath and you don't have to deal with that. But if you do, how you get it off is with tweezers or a tiny flathead screwdriver by pushing it inside of here and pulling to the side. It might take a few tries. Toss. But you want to keep these plastic bits in here because
Focus.
they're not centered. They go over to the side, and you just remember which way it goes when you put it back on. Now these, it's going the wrong way, and it was one of the complaints when people bought this, that this went the wrong way, but I was still able to figure it out. If you're going to lube it, which is optional, then you could pop this thing out. Just remember which way is up, because this side has a little thing that, because this part, when it's flat, down, goes up right here. Pop it out, and I've already lubed mine and put a little bit of lube inside of there with a small brush. And then when you're ready to put the keycap on, use your wide brush, just slide a tiny bit of lube inside of these slits. And then putting it on is, like, if you're right-handed, put the left-handed side first. If you're left-handed, do the right side first. And then you go to the other side with your tweezers or a tiny flathead screwdriver and push this over. And it's like that. And then you can see what you're doing. Slide the keycap over the switch stem. And then make sure both sides are down and that these little plastic things inside didn't get pulled out at all. And that's it. But this PCB was also soldered with a different kind of solder that I'm going to tell you about right now, how to deal with it. There's a couple ways to do this, but basically we need to introduce flux. At least the soldering iron I got came with some flux. And I'll just do this one as an example. I use a toothpick, put a little bit on the pins. Some of these have the pins on the south and other ones on the north around the edge of the circuit board. Don't know why. How you can tell which ones you're going to want to desolder, the smooth ones, you're going to want to leave those alone. And the pokey ones are the ones that are the pins for the actual switch. I tried the next thing with a couple different solder suckers and it screwed them both up, which is you heat up this flux and then you suck it all up, and it works a few times, and then it gets all gummed up in here because the flux is like sticky. So if you get a desoldering iron, it works. I should have showed you why you have to do this first. I'll show you that here in a second. The reason is, look at this one, okay? No, this one's showing up better on camera over here. I could sit here forever trying to heat this and suck at it and get it off. And I might get it off, but I might not. See, it's only some of it's coming out. Now this one's going to give me troubles later on. So if you don't want to try to get a desoldering iron, there's another way. Get the good solder that I told you about, because the good solder has a little bit of flux in it.
Also, 6337 solder has a lower melting point and flows smoother.
And leave your soldering iron there for a few seconds and make it all flow. How you can tell that it flows is because you see it turn into liquid suddenly and move. And now compress this thing down by pushing it down this way. And I have to do that a few times. Oh, and you can't see it because my arm's blocking it. So let's try doing it left-handed. Got my left hand on the soldering iron. That one went pretty well. Let's try this one. And this is why I don't like these solder suckers. They just spill bits of solder everywhere. I have to do this a few times, and it just... It's like it's sharding. Dookie. And then the other getcha is, if you can't just pull them out and they're fighting you, you have to like push on the center pin while heating the soldered pin to make it let go on the edge, because it's still holding on the edge. And that's why I've got these two pieces of wood underneath. So I just flip it over, see if they want to come out. Nope. Nope. So, I have to do this left-handed again because of where the camera is. Phone. Position it so the key switch is between the boards so it has somewhere to fall. Because otherwise, if you do this at an angle and you're trying to do weird pushing on it, your switch could fly across the room. So that's why I got the two boards. And it's out.
Actually, don't do this because you can break the traces on the board. I figured out later this is why every time I change the switches on another keyboard of mine, I would have a spot sometimes where I had to repair a trace by putting in a wire.
Hey, this is future me, and I just figured out an even better way to get out stubborn switches, but you're going to need one of these better switch pullers, because I tried what I'm about to show you with every other switch puller, and you can't manage it with two hands. It's like you need a third person. Get your troublesome switch grabbed onto with your switch puller, and it holds itself there until you release it. So we're not going to release it. We're just going to leave it there. And now I can grab this and just gently pull as I touch the pin that has solder that I can't seem to get off. So let's do another one. Maybe it's the other pin. There we go. It was the other pin. And that's going to save you a ton of time. There's one more getcha slash how do you do.
How do you do?
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 What am I saying? Weird things. If you use the flux method, you're going to have icky sticky stuff all over it. I have some isopropyl rubbing alcohol here. Just use an old toothbrush. Keep scrubbing at the flux.
So I learned later that you should do this before the flux hardens, so this is supposed to be done after each switch is pulled.
Until you've got it to come off. And then just dab it with a shop towel. That's it. You want to get as much off as you can, because if you leave it sticky, it will attract dust, and dust over time can become conductive and short out circuits.
I have different switches in different areas on the keyboard, and I decided to cut all of that out of this video so that it's not a million years long. I have tactile switches, linear switches, some clicky switches, and some even have the springs swapped. I decided to put all of those into some future videos.
All right, time travelers, it's time for the algorithm. You have to feed the algorithm or it goes crazy. There he is. That's he's taking over the screen. This is future me. Yes, I did this whole thing and it works, and why would I make a video if I failed to do it anyway? You need to feed the algorithm. He likes the like button, and he sometimes he can get by with the dislike button if you dislike something about the video. That's fine. He really loves comments and the scribble button, whatever it is. I can't words. But that just feeds the algorithm. He lives in the YouTubes. You really want to, tell me to
Shut up and take my money.
Then I have a Patreon. Patreon.com/RobertGene. Yeah, it's on the screen and also in the descriptable thingy box below. All right, I've got all of my switches soldered in. We're gonna talk about what you need to do at this point before fully assembling the keyboard. Have a test computer ready, obviously, and you can either go to keyboardtester.com or do like me, I always just Google it, online keyboard tester. Open that up. Hit launch the tester and have that ready. Have your back plate or whatever you want to call the bottom part of the keyboard to put underneath. You're not going to reassemble it yet, but you don't want any of the PCB to touch your work area and potentially short out because of little bits of solder that are chilling. This one's pretty simple because it's just a wire. If you have a wireless 2.4 gigahertz dongle or whatever, you still might need to connect this to a controller that's separate from the main PCB. Sometimes you don't.
And sometimes there's one for the battery.
If you do have 2.4 gigahertz and you know how to use it on your keyboard, that is easier than futzing around with Bluetooth or having to run a wire somewhere like I have to do right now. I'm just gonna go like that. Run this carefully. Sorry, I bumped the overhead camera. I just don't want to pinch this cord, but I'm not gonna yank on it or anything. So it just needs to be to where I don't break anything. And I'm gonna plug that in to my computer. Bing bong bonk. And as you test your keyboard, you're going to want to press each key more than one time. And as you test each switch, it's going to light up one of these in green. So you hit reset so they're all cleared out. And some of the switches have funny behavior, so when we get to them, I'll mention them. Just press each switch like 3 or 4 times. And watch the screen and make sure it flashes. Now, F1, F2, F3, F4, they're going to do something funny for me, so I have to go back and hit F3. Okay. These are my OBS keybinds that switch my cameras. But anyways. See, that one's not working. So I'm going to write that down in Notepad over here. Or you can write it down on a piece of paper, doesn't matter. Now F11 takes the web browser out of full screen or puts it in full screen. There we go. It's one of the little gatchas. F12, okay.
Some of the keys like Enter, Shift, Control, and Alt don't stay green because it doesn't know which of the 2 of them you pressed. I'll tell you more about that in a second.
Okay, that's part I gotta be careful. Because Shift button, is it working? Yeah, but it doesn't turn it green because it doesn't know. And you got, do you want to turn on sticky keys? Sticky keys do blah, 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 blah. No, I'm just testing my Shift. So I'm watching the screen, make sure it does orange. Controls the same way. Windows button is going to open the start menu. Okay, now Alt is going to try to send your cursor up into like the menu at the top of the web browser. It's not doing that to me right now because I have this in full screen, but just something to keep in mind. Com, I don't know what that is. Spacebar, I'm scrolling the page back up because spacebar is also acts like you're pressing page down or something. It's weird. Okay, right Alt. I don't have a right win. I have a function button. I know it works because I adjusted the lights earlier. But most keyboards, it's like, not that one, this one. It's function up, function down. Your keyboard might be different. If you don't have LEDs on your keyboard, then find something that the function does in combination with something else, and you know that switch is working. Then you do the function with that, make sure that function happens. And then my keyboard has what's called a context button. Select here. Context means you right-clicked on something and a right-click menu opened. The right-click menu is actually called a context menu. And the keycap looks like focus. Oh yeah, that's right, that camera can't focus. That's a context icon sometimes. Your keyboard will have one of those. To the arrows. Okay, delete, insert, home, and also want to scroll the thing, page up, page down, want to scroll the page, pause break, scroll lock, print screen. I don't know why it's not making clicky click sounds. Number lock. Number lock is off. So I just went through all that and I wasn't looking at the screen. It should have been. Number lock on. Okay, now my keyboard has a little light right there. Let's do that again. So the only one that doesn't work is F6. I can carefully flip this over and look. I'm not going to solder it while it's plugged in because shut up, that's stupid. And it looks like I soldered it. F5, F6, F7. Okay. Unplug it from the computer first. Okay. Unplug that. And we need to take that switch out and see what's going on. Usually when this happens to me, it's because I forgot to solder that particular switch. Oh, that's easy to see what happened. The switch pin got flattened out. So what the heck was I putting solder on? On the other side? Nothing, I guess. And that's why we have this tool, like I talked about earlier in the video. Let's see here. I can grab it, start to pull it straight. It's still not quite straight, so let's switch to the overhead cam. See how good that Insta360 camera is. Amazing. Straighten it out just by squeezing it flat. I'm glad I'm checking this now. I hate to have to need F6 or something in the future and be like, oh, my keyboard doesn't have F6. I don't know why. I guess I just have to live without having F6.
What's wrong, Dad?
I don't know.
What's wrong? What's wrong?
Are you just shut?
If you want to see more about different switches and what they sound like with keycaps on and different choices, I'm going to be doing a video that's coming up. I'm going over every single switch that I've tested, which is a ton of different switches. And I'm doing tactile, linear, and clicky ones.
And also silent switches.
Subscribe and keep an eye out for that video. Now, at this point, it's time to reassemble the keyboard. This particular one's got that little wire thing that goes down in there. That slides in like that. And I remember writing down how many screws I need, 12. So let's go ahead and get all those screws put back in. Now's the time that you want to clean your keycaps if you haven't yet. You don't really have to clean the tops. And technically I should have cleaned the tops before I did this, but I don't use this keyboard that much. You want to look at the sides of the keycaps and put them back on the keyboard in the same order as you have them laid out over there, or look at a picture of the keyboard online. But some keyboards have certain things in different places. For example, this keyboard is Alt Function Context Control.
Hopefully you took pictures before doing all this, like I said earlier in the video. Again, we're going to skip over this part because I'm just wiping down the sides of each keycap and putting them on. You can also wash the keycaps by putting them in a bowl of soapy water for 15 minutes. Obviously, take a picture of your keyboard's layout before taking the keycaps off. This was my first attempt at this.
Maybe this will work. Maybe. We'll see.
Alright, let's see if this... Kimball! Alright, let's see if this method works. My son actually told me about this method.
It's my work keyboard for in the office. And about 6 months ago, I took the keycaps off and I cleaned all the sides with a wipe, as I do once a year on all my keyboards. All the grime and the dust that was on the sides, gone. Like, here's a before picture, and, you know, here's after. So, I'm just gonna rinse them off and lay them out and dab them with a towel. And then call it dunsies.
Then go around and look for any keycaps that are kind of like standing up too tall. Keyboard feels great now. Won't feel as bad. That's why these things are here, is because I was using this as a backup keyboard when my main keyboard for my editing rig fried when I spilled drink on it, and I needed these are the most commonly used keys in my video editor. Why don't you tell me what kind of switches or keyboards you like, and write that down in the comments because I'm curious. I know a bunch of stuff about mechanical keyboards and in switches, and maybe you'll tell me something I don't know, or give me more context why something exists to certain people like, or whatever. I'm looking at my doc here. Upcoming videos in relation to mechanical keyboards, not in relation to my AI stuff. The keyboard stuff is going to be the next one with keyboard switches sounds, where I fill out all 3 of these rows and the space bar. If possible, if I don't have enough switches, then I do as many as I can. And then type a few sentences so that you could hear what it sounds like with a mic pushed right up real close to it. And then I give a quick review about those switches according to my experience and my subjective opinion. Next video after that is going to be about swapping springs and how to do that, and lube the internals. And maybe you just want to get a different spring, or maybe you just want to lube, or maybe you want to do both. Doesn't matter. It's going to be in that video. I don't know what videos I'm going to be putting over here, but I'm going to have videos over there. Check them out if you still want to hang out and watch stuff on my channel. And you can subscribe to the thingy that's going to be on the bottom right, and check out my artwork and see if you're into the AI art stuff. You could go check out my Patreon over here. And I'll see you guys somewhere in space-time. All right, bye.